told you I'd be wearing a different shirt on the second days of recording. Yes, indeed, this is round 2 of Creative Outlet Podcast intro for the Gaming Birthday Extravaganza episode recordings. And I have to say, it's been kind of interesting over the last day or so doing things. I've got the rest of my stuff all hung up here, so I'm sure a couple of different things look different in the background. And I got this nice question mark block on my 3 drawer shelf that I had initially elsewhere, but now I've moved it over here with a nice little Kirby plush on top of it. He's backwards because I thought you might be able to see it reflected in the mirror, but it's hard to tell on the tiny little camcorder. But beyond that, it's been fun doing other things as far as uploading just a ton of stuff all at once, being able to get out all at once and planning to see how things are going to be. Of course, it's fun to see how the audio aspect of this is going to be, because I realized, one of the great things about Anchor is that I can just make my podcast into pieces. So instead of just having to go into Audacity here and putting together the intro and putting in a little sound in the middle and then doing the bigger piece of audio and putting that as one file, I could just make it easier on myself here and put them all in pieces in Anchor, and then it'll go through and play them all for you. In fact, it mashes them all together when the podcast gets distributed to other platforms like Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, etc., etc. But you're not here to learn about all my fun new room changes. They're probably not going to be a separate studio video because I just did that yesterday, and it's really not all too terribly different beyond a couple more signs that you might not even necessarily be able to see. You're here to learn more about the Donkey Kong series, because that's what today's episode is on. So as always with these intros, I'd like to bring up a little bit of news that is relevant about our given topic. So I just have 4 little pieces here. Maybe this will make this a little bit of a shorter intro. I don't know. But I want to start with this, apparently this quote-unquote super rare Game & Watch limited edition that sold for $9,000, which, I mean, that's no drop in the bucket as far as I'm concerned, but apparently that is 1 million yen. And I would say for a Game & Watch, especially a limited edition unit, this is actually pretty darn cheap, because I mean, just a plain Jane Game & Watch nowadays can go for a couple $100, which is why I don't have any other than my handy dandy Super Mario Brothers limited edition 35th anniversary Game & Watch. But this particular Game & Watch is a special unit that was commissioned by members of the Game & Watch team, Gunpei Yokoi, as well as a couple of folks here that are only noted by their initials, a K Momose and a T Ishida. I don't know exactly who these folks are as far as their full-blown names. The article does state what their titles are in some way, shape, or form. But these are some folks that were instrumental in, like I said, in different ways at making the Game & Watch come to be and making it successful. After all, this piece here was commissioned because it was the anniversary in 1982 commemorating 20 million Game & Watch units sold. And it's appropriate that they would pick the Donkey Kong Game & Watch to be the game to use for this, because it is only the most popular Game & Watch, the one that contributed to having 20 million units sold inevitably. And it shows. It is, after all, the cheapest Game & Watch, the most common one to find. If I were to get one, that's probably the one I would get, because that's, like I said, the cheapest one. Although I can play Game & Watch Donkey Kong through the Game & Watch collection on my Nintendo DS if I really wanted to, so I don't know, not really much value for me, but it is interesting to see that limited edition hardware has been around even as early as the Game & Watch days. Now, something a little bit more interesting is a bit of a random thing that happened in late June. Does it say who it is? An individual used the process of ion milling. I don't know why I'm reading iron as ion, other than how darn similar the words are. Stripped literal layers of atoms to engrave an itty bitty 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 teeny teeny tiny Diddy Kong on a penny. So right next to Abraham Lincoln's shoulder on this random penny is a tiny Diddy Kong that you cannot see to the naked eye. And after all, I mean, even Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial, this is an old school penny before it had the stupid shield that I don't think is nearly as cool as Abraham Lincoln sitting in the Lincoln Memorial. But there's just a tiny, 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 tiny Diddy Kong set of atoms just extracted off of this penny. And I think that is a pretty neat little idea, though I'm not sure why Diddy Kong of all of the Kongs for it. I would feel like, the main man himself, Donkey Kong, would be the better Kong for this. But, if the person who did this is more a fan of Diddy, more power to them. Similarly, one of the games we're going to be talking about in this episode is Donkey Kong 64. And now I didn't get too much into this particular aspect of Donkey Kong 64, but one of the common themes among the rareware platformers of the Nintendo 64 era, or at least something that was supposed to be common among them, was the stop and swap feature. If you don't know what that is, that was a feature that was planned to be in Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and utilized in Donkey Kong 64, where players would be able to stop, turn off the console, and swap out their rareware games to because certain information would be stored in the system RAM of the Nintendo 64, and so it could be still accessed when the new cartridge was placed in the 64 console. However, when the development unit's out, that amount of time was about 10 seconds. In practice in retail units, it would have been, I don't remember if it was 1 second or less than 1 second, and so really all that would accomplish is damaging either your Nintendo 64 games or your hardware. So Stop and Swap didn't end up getting to be, even though there were references to it in Banjo-Kazooie. As far as the particular details for what Stop and Swap would have included, we just happen to know here, at least more specifically, why Donkey Kong 60, or at least why these games did not end up having it, is just a letter was found in late January. Wow, this is an old article. I thought I was only pulling things from the summer, but I guess I found something from the winter that clarified more specifically why the feature was removed. But although I just kind of explained it here, that's the agreed upon reason. Now, one big thing that I've noticed with Donkey Kong, the series, is that there hasn't seemed to have been a ton happening for it as of late, outside of the Tropical Freeze port to Switch. However, one area, and I do believe I cite this in the Futures segment, I actually do not recall, but one of the things that Donkey Kong seems to have going for it is there appears to be some sort of attraction or additional little world coming based on the Donkey Kong Series 2 Super Nintendo world. Of course, only the Japan park is open, so for all we know, by the time the Hollywood Studios Universal theme park and or the Orlando theme parks are able to fully open their Super Nintendo worlds, they may have the Donkey Kong attraction, whatever that would end up being in there. But it seems like more and more details are pouring out about this, or at least it just seems like the designs used in this mysterious area appear to be very Donkey Kong-like, but we just don't know exactly what in the end we will see. Donkey Kong does seem to be the one Mario character that doesn't have much representation in Super Nintendo World as is, so it would be appropriate to have the second mini world in Super Nintendo World be focused on Donkey Kong. But with that, I think that just covers all the newsy things I wanted to cite here. I figure we should formally get into our going back in time for the recording that I have done here. As always, in these Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza episodes I have planned for the fall of 2021, we're going to be giving an overview of the series, talk about what my experiences are with it, just talk about some factual information, see like why things are revolutionary, and move on to see what could the future of this series be until addressing some sort of special topic. And you know, there was no series better than Donkey Kong to have for this. Although I suppose Zelda had, I would say all of the series actually had pretty interesting topics here, including the Super Nintendo, just as a console, had a fairly interesting topic of its own. But I feel like the Donkey Kong series is especially right because of how weak Donkey Kong 64 as a game is, because what I wanted to address, there are a few design flaws in that game that I feel like could be very interesting to come up with different solutions to address. But in this case, I went with the most classic problem, the one that is most frequently cited as an annoying pace breaker in Donkey Kong 64. How do we go about the issue of switching Kongs and making that easier and more convenient, while also not losing the value of having something like switching the Kongs? After all, one of the most common solutions that I've heard put out is just map the dongs. That could have been bad. Map the Kongs to the directional pad. Although I identify how that could actually have some worse issues than people realize. So with that, I will let you all back into the original episode. Please enjoy, everyone. And once more, we have our final recording, at least for me, for the Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza. Today we're going to be talking about the guy, you know, the one who's the leader of the bunch. We all know him well. That's right, we're talking about the Donkey Kong series, as the Donkey Kong arcade game is indeed turning 40 years old this year. July 31st, 1981 is when it was brought over to the West. However, the original version released just a couple weeks earlier in Japan. And it also kind of helps that regardless, even the NES version was released in 86. So I'm just saying, no matter what, we got an anniversary happening for Donkey Kong this year. Although, of course, I care more about when the original arcade game released. Before we get too far into this little recording, I just want to point out you could very well hear plenty of construction noises in the background, so many that it would be way too much to try to get them all out, because they're using one of those excavators outside not too far from here. So I want to apologize if there's any of that sound in here. I know that would be quite irritating for some listeners, but I don't know exactly what I can do about it at the moment. But regardless of that, today we're going to be celebrating Donkey Kong. And we have a few games to talk about here. Not nearly as many as I talked about when I talked about Sonic or Zelda, but a little bit more than we talked about in the Ace Attorney series. And of course, we're going to talk about the typical topics in every episode as well. What's in the future for Donkey Kong? And we have a little bit of a special topic here. I want to make sure. I'm pretty confident I know what it's on, but I haven't checked my notes in a little bit. I just pulled them up for the first time in a little bit, but it should be focused on actually one of the games we're going to be talking about in the overview, but I'm not going to address the specific problem I have with it. Yes. It's focused on Donkey Kong 64, and the classic question, what the heck should have been done about switching the Kongs? The other option I would have picked as something that I think could have been interesting to solve in that game would be, how do you remove some of the collectibles from the game? That's we can save that probably briefer conversation for when we actually discuss Donkey Kong 64, which hopefully shouldn't be too far from now anyway. So Donkey Kong, it's quite an interesting series. It's had very interesting directions. You know, you have your arcade. It's like it is one of the series that is most definitely defined by eras, not just console eras, but full blown. These few games define an era. These few games define an era, and these remaining games define an era. I would describe it as like the arcade era, the Rareware era. I describe it like that because I could say the country era, but, you know, that kind of makes it hard to fit in Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong 64. I'm not going to discuss Diddy Kong Racing because it isn't actually a Donkey Kong game, plus, well, I mean, A, it doesn't have Donkey Kong in the title, and B, Donkey Kong isn't in it at all. It's all about Diddy Kong. It's kind of a weird little game regardless. Then we have the... it's almost like the dark era of the Donkey Kong series post the Rare leaving Nintendo. But then it picks up again with what I would call the Retro Studios era in when Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze were released. But with those two eras defined here, let's talk about the original arcade Donkey Kong. So, you know, Donkey Kong is a game that I've played, definitely not as much as Pac-Man or Galaga, but I have played it a fair share of times. And frankly, I think it's an interesting arcade game for a handful of reasons. Of course, there are the aspects that are undeniable about it. It probably was not the first game to have a story in the background, but it was definitely one of the first. Perhaps it's the most prominent example of an arcade game with a story. After all, I just talked about Pac-Man. It had some little cutscenes in the middle, but nothing that would approach what you would call a full-blown story for Pac-Man. If anything, Ms. Pac-Man did better with having a quote-unquote story in the game. But Donkey Kong actually had a pretty clearly defined story. I don't know if you could necessarily say it follows the hero's journey, so to speak, or... Oh, no, that's not the phrase I want to use. I can picture it in my head, but I can't think of the word. But the dramatic, like, arc that you're supposed to go to, that you're supposed to use when you're making a story. You know, it has your start where everything's normal, then you have your... There's something that causes the rising action, then the climax falling action, and the resolution, so to speak. I suppose in a sense it has that. After all, the story of Donkey Kong is pretty simple. The gorilla Donkey Kong has kidnapped Pauline, and now Mario's on his way to save her. And lo and behold, you play the arcade game, you go through all the levels, you save Pauline. So, you know, I don't know what exactly the start of it would have been like, but clearly your inciting incident, that's it, is when Donkey Kong takes Pauline. Your rising action is going through the first couple of levels, and I guess really the main thing that it's missing is just what would the falling action be like. But I mean, it's really that simple, the story of Donkey Kong, right? Mario, the carpenter at this time, finds Pauline, captured by Donkey Kong at the top of a construction site. He reaches the top of the level, and then Donkey Kong takes her to another level. It could be 50 meters, which ended up being because all these stages are in they're named 25, 50 meters, 75 meters, and 100 meters, which of course is where the 75 meter Smash Brothers stage comes from. As much as people don't really love that stage. But, you know, 25 meters, probably one of the most iconic levels in all of video games. You know, you go right, up, left, up, all the way until you reach the top where you meet with Pauline after having jumped many barrels or perhaps hit them with a hammer along the way and defeated them, so to speak, to obtain points. And then you go on to... So, see, Donkey Kong... is a bit of a weird game in that it continues going on, but each time it seems to add on a level until you've played all 4 over and over. You have like I just said, you have 25 meters, but if I remember correctly, the second level then immediately proceeds to 100 meters. So that's and this is a level where there are essentially 4 levels, and Mario has to walk across all of the how do I describe it? They're like bolts of some kind that are leaving all the platforms together, and then of course once they're all walked over, it causes Donkey Kong, because he's so heavy, to fall and crush all the platforms below him, and then the game ends. But then it seems that then in the second playthrough you add 75 meters in the middle instead of 50 meters. 75 meters, man. It's such a weird stage. I'd say it's closer to... it's definitely closer to 25 meters than any of the other levels, but it's similar. You just need to get to the end of the level. But now it adds in some different mechanics. Things get a little more complicated. You have these pickups that you can obtain for more points. There's a parasol. Pauline has a hat. She has some kind of purse. You just pick those up. You get some extra points for having done so. It's definitely a much harder level. You have much taller ladders you have to climb. There are these elevators that you need to carry. And make sure you don't go to the bottom or the top of the elevator, because you'll just get crushed and die. This is the first game it is the first Donkey Kong game and basically the first Mario game in a sense. So certainly Mario then has some fall damage applied to him frustratingly. That's not something very good about the game. It's something that I much prefer about later Mario games outside of the 3D ones, is that they no longer have fall damage for Mario. But then when you go through the final, the fourth run through, you get all 4 levels, 25, 50, 75, and 100 meters. And 50 meters, I swear, some have described it as like the Pie Factory stage, but I think it's actually supposed to be like a cement mixing site. Because it's similar. You just have some ladders you climb, but instead of having regular platforms along the whole way, instead you have some conveyor belts with some, like, again, they look like pies, but I think they're actually considered, they're probably like buckets of cement, and of course if you jump in them you die. So you need to get to the top of the level, but now you have to contend with conveyor belts. So Donkey Kong is certainly a simple and well-designed arcade game, but ultimately I wouldn't really call it the one that I am the most attracted to playing whenever I see arcade games around. And to be fair, I guess part of that is I've actually never seen a standalone Donkey Kong game. I've seen, have you ever been to restaurants or other places that just have these arcade games that have, like, probably 36, 42 or so games in one, just all preloaded onto it? Those are the only ones that I've ever seen Donkey Kong on. And, some of them, of course, they have Donkey Kong Jr. or 3, and that's just other games, Pac-Man, Galaxian, whatever else you can think of. It could be on there. Not everything's on there. And then you have some weird ones, like there's this arcade game, Ladybug. I actually like that. It's a weird Pac-Man clone, but we're not here to talk about Pac-Man. We're here to talk about Donkey Kong. But I would hope that if I ever did see a standalone Donkey Kong game or arcade cabinet, that I'd want to play it. And then Donkey Kong's the arcade game has had such an interesting legacy in with all of its ports, because nowadays when we think of Nintendo games, right? What do they all get ported to? Well, only Nintendo hardware. But this was, Donkey Kong was 1981. The NES was not out yet. So Donkey Kong was actually released on tons of different hardware. It was on the Atari 2600. It certainly wasn't the same, but it was on the Atari. It only had 25 meters and 100 meters, but it was still on there. Similarly, there was a ColecoVision version. There was an Intellivision version of Donkey Kong. Eventually, of course, Donkey Kong would end up on the NES, as I pointed out. There would end up being a Game & Watch version of Donkey Kong. It seems to be the most common Game & Watch unit as well. But even all of these other versions are still missing things. Like, a bunch of versions seem to leave out 50 meters in particular. Some miss out on 75 meters. Other ones miss out on aspects of the arcade game. Like, they don't include there's the screen that has, it's a very weird screen. It's like, how high can you get? And it shows Donkey Kong, and then when you get to 50 meters, whoa, it's two Donkey Kongs standing on each other. It's a very weird sort of thing. Some versions don't have that. Some versions don't include all of the items. Even the NES version misses 50 meters. And then interestingly enough, there was a unique version of the NES version of Donkey Kong made only for the 3DS. Very, very strange. Actually, it might have been on the Wii as well. I'm looking at the Mario Wiki article here to see if I am missing any important things that I'd want to talk about. It looks like the Donkey Kong Original Edition Virtual Console release was also on the Mario 25th Anniversary Red Wii pre-installed. What a weird... Again, this version of the game has had very strange releases. But then it was also available on the 3DS in some weird aspects. You could find it in Japan using Club Nintendo by downloading something like New Super Mario Bros. 2 between certain dates. And then, between certain dates in the US, you could download certain titles to get it for a North American 3DS. So, the only port, or, well, perhaps not the only port, but one of the only ports of Donkey Kong to include all of the levels is essentially a very strange and rare release. It's very interesting. It seems like, it looks like, according to this article, the European 3DS did have Donkey Kong Original Edition released to everyone in September of 2014. So that's basically the only way you can try the NES version of Donkey Kong with all of the proper levels. Even the NES Switch Online version, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have all of the levels. So, more or less, the only quote-unquote true way to play Donkey Kong in its full glory is with the... why can't I think of it? Is by playing the arcade version. That's kind of a given. Obviously, the only true way to play an arcade game is by playing it on the arcade cabinet. But especially with Donkey Kong, if you want to get all the levels, you need to play the arcade version. Now, fortunately, there is the Switch Arcade Archives release. That's not the version that you've probably been seeing footage throughout me talking about the original Donkey Kong here with. I only have the NES version on Switch Online. But I think it's a perfectly fine version of the game, but it's so fascinating to see how many different versions of Donkey Kong there are. And, of course, as the series went on, we would see, there's not quite so many ports of these games here, including with the second entry in the Donkey Kong series, not Donkey Kong 2, but Donkey Kong Jr. So Donkey Kong Jr. is interesting because I wouldn't really call it super different from the original Donkey Kong, but it is definitely it it seems to double down on a lot of aspects of the original Donkey Kong. I would say for the better. Of course, it is literally a continuation of the original story. What do you think would happen at the end of Donkey Kong after Mario's saved Pauline and Donkey Kong's sitting all knocked out? Mario's gonna capture him, right? Now, if Donkey Kong has a son named Donkey Kong Jr., well, what would you want to do as the son of Donkey Kong, who's captured? Well, you'd want to free him. So now the story has flipped where, Mario's now the bad guy, right? He's trying to keep Donkey Kong locked up, for better or worse. So now you play as Donkey Kong Jr. and want to free him. And similarly, you go through 4 levels to accomplish that as well. But of course, like with the Donkey Kong 1 re-releases, certain versions of the game might not have all of those levels. Now, I do think that, if I remember correctly, the NES version actually does include all of the levels, unlike the original DK, so to speak. But if I'm going to be totally honest here, I really don't like Donkey Kong Jr. I think the original Donkey Kong is a much superior game. And it's a shame because really it should be the other way around. I should like Donkey Kong Jr. much more than I like Donkey Kong the original, because it is a sequel, right? Granted, it's not like it had a ton more time. It only came out a year later than the original Donkey Kong, and it does have some new aspects, like in Donkey Kong Jr., a lot of the gameplay is based on climbing up vines and instead of ladders. So, for example, Donkey Kong Jr. can climb up one vine, but it'll go pretty slowly. But if you have him reach onto an adjacent vine, he can climb with both and go much faster. So you can strategize to okay, do I need to go faster here? Is there an enemy coming? Do I want to slow down? Do I need to turn myself? So it has some more interesting choices. But I find that those choices end up not being particularly helpful for me. I tend to find I can get past the first stage of Donkey Kong Jr., but then when you get to the second and especially the third stage is when I start to struggle. The fourth stage at least seems pretty easy. You just need to push the keys up to the top to free Donkey Kong, but I tend to find I have trouble with it. I don't know why. I mean, for all I know, in the footage that I've been showing of Donkey Kong Jr. here as I've been playing it, I've been playing just absolutely amazingly, getting through every level. But I just find that the later, I don't know if it's that the controls are more stiff, or if it's just my penchant for wanting to play quickly is just getting me killed. But I have trouble playing Donkey Kong Jr. But even still, including in the arcade as well. It's not just the NES version, it's the arcade version as well. But I would say that's still even better than a game that I think is more interesting, but is also probably worse, and that's Donkey Kong 3. When I was a wee lad, I was aware of Donkey Kong, I was aware of Donkey Kong Jr. I had no idea there was a Donkey Kong 3 until, honestly, I had a computer to learn about these sorts of things from the Mario Wiki, and I was like, there's a Donkey Kong 3? I wonder what that's like. And kind of like with the Donkey Kong Country Trilogy, I do think Donkey Kong 3 is interesting, if only because it does go in a super weird, unique direction compared to the prior two games. And I think Donkey Kong 3 deserves some brownie points for that. So unlike Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., I would classify Donkey Kong 3 as more of a shoot 'em up, like it obviously isn't a space shooter, but kind of in the vein of space shooters sort of game. And it is the only game in the original trilogy here not to include Mario as a character at all. So in this game, you control Stanley the Bugman. He was also in the Game & Watch game Greenhouse, which that's, in my opinion, one of the superior Game & Watch titles. But in this game, Donkey Kong has broken into Stanley's greenhouse and is hanging up in the rafters, where apparently, Stanley is a terrible exterminator and just has like giant bees' nests that want to steal Stanley's flowers. So, what would you do if you're Stanley and you have some bug spray? You're gonna kill those bees who are trying to take your flowers, and you're gonna try to get Donkey Kong to go away. So the game is very, very strange. You have these like 2 or 3 platforms in the middle, and you want to shoot Donkey Kong to the top of the greenhouse, right? You want him to get the heck out of here, and that same sort of gameplay applies through the second and third levels of the game as well. You really just want to get Donkey Kong to leave your greenhouse in the first couple of levels, but then the third one at least is a little bit different in that there is a bee's nest in the top of the greenhouse that Donkey Kong's gonna stick his head in when he gets shot all the way up to the top, right? So, interesting game, interesting direction, but this is the arcade era of Donkey Kong is the very rare time when I would argue that the first game actually did it the best. And I don't know if that is an unpopular opinion, with that Donkey Kong 1 is better than Donkey Kong Jr., but I happen to think that the simplicity of Donkey Kong, the original, is one of its greatest aspects. Now, there is one other classic Donkey Kong game, so to speak, that I just realized I hadn't made notes for, or at least had found an article for it that I could reference. But there is indeed another version of the original Donkey Kong that is worth talking about. It's more its own version of the game, but at first glance, it appears to be the same as the original Donkey Kong. And of course, I'm talking about Donkey Kong and the Game Boy, sometimes referred to as Donkey Kong 94. And actually, I just got an actual Game Boy copy of the game recently. I've primarily played it using the 3DS Virtual Console version of the game. But I mean, Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, it's pretty simple. It starts out as the normal Donkey Kong, and then it takes a weird turn. Now it's like a full-blown actual puzzle platform where you go through another, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more worlds. I didn't realize how many how many worlds the game actually had with, 2 worlds alone each have 20 stages, and then there's 25 for the last 2 worlds. So, there's a lot of content in this game. Thankfully, it does have a save feature, if I do remember correctly. It should. Let me just double check here. It said I can save Mario, but I don't remember if it actually has a save feature. It should, since it's such a long game. But I digress. That's probably not super duper important. It's a long game, and it makes a unique twist on Donkey Kong, right? Because, I think about a game like, what's a good example? Pac-Man on the Game Boy, right? It's just Pac-Man, but on the Game Boy. It would have been very easy to just do Donkey Kong on the Game Boy as Donkey Kong on the Game Boy. In fact, I think that would have made people very happy. But I think it is a testament to Nintendo's design chops that they decided, no, you know what? We're going to go the extra mile. We're going to make a whole brand new set of levels that are more puzzly, and make Mario just that much more acrobatic. Mario can crouch. He can't crouch in the original Donkey Kong. All he can do in Donkey Kong on the arcade is jump and grab a hammer. He can do a handstand. These are all moves that would end up being carried, or maybe not all of them, but many of these moves would be carried over to Mario versus Donkey Kong in the Game Boy Advance. I didn't really want to discuss that subseries today. It feels like I would argue it's more of its own thing, even though it's clearly based on Donkey Kong on the Game Boy. Let's see, what other sorts of things can Mario do? Not only can you get Mario to handstand, but he does an even bigger jump when he does that. He can backflip. There are wires that he can shimmy along and spin and do a big jump off of. So the game is just like a way, way bigger experience. And, I wish I could remember how far I'm even into that game. I feel like I'm honestly only in World 2. It's been so long, and there's just a level that, for whatever reason, I got stuck in. I want to say that it was in the jungle, but for whatever reason, I feel like it was only the forest level, World 2, that I got stuck in. That, for whatever reason, I just can't seem to solve a puzzle in to beat the level, which, that's kind of sad, but I do intend on beating this version of Donkey Kong at some point or another, because it is a pretty important version of the game. But I don't have a ton to say on it because I haven't played it a bunch. That was one of the first 3DS Virtual Console games I did purchase, so in that sense it is important to me, as it was one of the games that established my relationship with the 3DS. Actually, something I didn't talk about much in the 3DS episode, I suppose, now that I think about it, is that I didn't exactly talk about my experiences with the Virtual Console at all in that version. But I don't think that's super duper important here. Now we get into our second era of Donkey Kong, the country era, with their oh goodness, why can't I think of the word? With their not respective, but with their there's a particular word I want to use to describe this, but I can't remember it. But they're paired with their equivalent Donkey Kong Land games. Now, I talked about the Donkey Kong Country series in my SNES episode, so I don't really want to spend a ton of time on these three games here, but suffice it to say, these three games are very important to me, especially the original Donkey Kong Country, because as I've talked about going all the way back to the first episode of this show, Donkey Kong Country was one of the first video games I ever played. It was that Super Mario World, and perhaps the one that I found most interesting was Super Off-Road the Baja. While my dad played Donkey Kong, I played Diddy Kong. Probably not one of his best moves, because Diddy Kong was the superior Kong, but that's what we did. Him and I would go through levels, so that was a very formative gaming experience for me. Whereas I associate Donkey Kong Countries 2 and 3 more with the Game Boy Advance versions. And, I remember it wasn't really until I moved here back to the state of Wisconsin in 2008 or so that I finally got acquainted with Donkey Kong Country 2. This was still like the time where GameStop still had Game Boy Advance games loose in those little the little cases that they would put those and loose DS games in. And I remember just looking and seeing, like, wait, does that say Donkey Kong Country 2? There was a sequel to Donkey Kong Country and I didn't know it? And then right next to that, that's Donkey Kong Country 3? No, so not only was there one sequel, there were two sequels? and we never had them on the Super Nintendo. I was shocked because I considered Donkey Kong Country to be, like I said, it was a formative game for me. It's one of the most important games to my childhood. So it was mind-blowing to be like, there's more Donkey Kong Country. I'm so excited to play more. And, of course, in fact, the shirt I'm wearing today to celebrate this Donkey Kong Extravaganza is based on Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. And then I would subsequently learn that, of course, there were SNES versions on available to play that we would... well, actually, no, I wouldn't download them for the Wii Virtual Console, but that was where I learned of the SNES versions. And it honestly wasn't until like 2019 or 2020 that I actually got my first SNES copy of Donkey Kong Country 2. For whatever reason, I just could not find a cartridge of that game to save my life until finally then. And that's fine. I was perfectly content with the Game Boy Advance version. In fact, I would still call... I still think... I think the SNES version of Donkey Kong Country is superior, probably because I'm nostalgic for that version, but I think the Game Boy Advance versions of Donkey Kong Countries 2 and 3 are superior, probably because I'm nostalgic for that version, but at least Donkey Kong Country 3 did have the ace up its sleeve of having an extra world and a way superior soundtrack. I'm sorry, Eveline Novakovic / Fisher. I don't know which which name she goes by nowadays. But I do much prefer David Wise's Donkey Kong Country 3 GBA soundtrack, but that's neither here nor there. And I just, what more can I say about these games that I didn't already say in the SNES episode? Honestly, it has been a while since I've recorded that, so I don't exactly remember what I said, but, these are... I think that the Donkey Kong Country trilogy are like super duper important games. They, some folks might gloss over them today as just being, Super Mario World's the better game, and Donkey Kong Country is just the game that had these weird graphics. No. Donkey Kong Country was way more than that. It was the game that made, if it wasn't Super Mario World, and I really don't think it much was, even though it certainly laid the groundwork for this. It was definitely Donkey Kong Country that established the benefit of 100%, all the way to the point where it was 101% and 102 and 3% in their respective sequels. You could go through and play all of the levels and just beat them, but Donkey Kong Country would be more rewarding if you went after the bonus levels, and to me that is the crux that makes the Country game superior. Certainly Super Mario World, like I said, it tried to get you to 100% the game because you could get through all 96 of the exits. And admittedly, Donkey Kong Country isn't much better than Super Mario World in their regard that neither of them really have much rewards for going for 100%, because technically what I would call the quote-unquote completion reward for Super Mario World, just the change of the seasons and seeing all the enemies change, you get that after completing the special world, which if you want, you could do that right after beating Yoshi's Island and the first couple of levels of Donut Plains, but I'm getting a little off track here. Donkey Kong Country, your 100% completion bonuses came by only beating all of the levels and seeing all of the bonus rooms. Granted, I would argue your reward really was more so in the case of Donkey Kong Countries 2 and 3, the special world, or not the special, the Lost Worlds and playing through those stages, for better or worse, because Donkey Kong Country 3's Lost World is not nearly as good as Donkey Kong Country 2's, but, you'd get an extra special ending, you would get, you would have seen just so much more of the game by doing all of the bonus rooms and getting to the bonus world, or the Lost World, right? So, and even then, the Game Boy Advance versions would give you just that little bit more to do, whether you had to do, there's the Bag of Bug mini games, there's Expresso's Racing, of course, Donkey Kong Country 1 had the Funky's Fishing and the Candy's Dance Studio mini games added on. I don't know much about the the Game Boy Color version of Donkey Kong Country, what sorts of additions that version had, how much of the stuff was different in the Game Boy Color version. Maybe I can pull something up about that here. I just want to make sure. Where is it? Does it say much about the... Here it is, Game Boy Color. I don't think it had any... Okay, it did have Funky's Fishing, but it had a different... Oh, Cranky had a minigame, not Candy. Candy had a different... She had some kind of challenge deal in the Game Boy Color version. And really, the only important thing about the Game Boy Color version, as far as I'm concerned, is just that, wow, it had an extra level that's exclusive to it, that for some reason couldn't come back in the Game Boy Advance version. How strange. I don't know what's up with that. But, I don't know. I think of Donkey Kong Country as an important series, but it's almost like this lost in time, like, I should think of it as an SNES series, or I should think of it as a Game Boy Advance series, but instead it's like I think of it as SNES for the first game, then we freeze in time all the way to the Game Boy Advance games, and I love them a lot. I've played all three of these games for hours and hours and hours and hours, just more in their own respective versions. But one game that I have not played much is what I would call the final rareware Donkey Kong game, and that is Donkey Kong 64. Oh boy, DK64, when I got a Nintendo 64, this was one of the 3 games I got with it. It should have been DK64, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and F-Zero X, if I recall correctly. Donkey Kong 64 was a game I was so excited for, but outside of when I first started playing it, I can't say I've played it much since then. And it's because Donkey Kong 64 is a very time-consuming game, and it's a very... I would argue it's a pretty draining sort of game. And... frankly, that is because, and now I don't know if this is, I would hope this is not the case anymore, but it was at one point the game that had the greatest number of in-game collectibles. I mean, take this with a grain of salt for how much it really matters and or how true it is, but it did hold the like Guinness Gamer World Record for the greatest quantity of collectibles in game. And yeah, Donkey Kong 64 has a lot of collectibles. Like I said, the special topic we're going to be talking about today is how would we improve the in-game character switching mechanic in Donkey Kong 64. But the other question I was considering tackling was, how much can you strip out of Donkey Kong 64? And the reason I didn't go with that question is because, and this is not to get all, I've taken a game design class, attitude on you, but, video games are a system, and, I'm sure you've learned about systems in, like, middle school science or maybe high school science, but what happens when you have a system and you take a part out of it? The whole thing collapses. That's kind of why extinction events in the environment are so important, because they're supposed to... It's not the exact same because evolution plays a role, but, on paper, the whole system should collapse, right? Just because you remove one thing. And I think that could be very true with Donkey Kong 64 as well, where if you just say, no, I want to remove one particular type of collectible, that could take down the whole rest of the system. without having to make massive adjustments to it. Like, you could be like, I don't think Donkey Kong 64 needs the blueprint mechanic, because there is a mechanic in Donkey Kong 64 where one of the collectibles is you have to collect these blueprints from certain enemies, right? And collecting all of the blueprints will help slow down will add more time to the timer for the final world of the game that takes place inside of K. Rool's ship slash Crocodile Isle itself, the Blast-O-Matic. That's actually referenced in King K. Rool's Final Smash, but I digress. Well, let's see, what was I going with here? Oh, but if the more blueprints you collect, the more time you have to beat that final world and get to the final boss. But if you take all of those out, then what do you do to increase the timer? Do you time the final world? Now you suddenly have to change a lot about the last world of Donkey Kong 64. There's a lot of golden bananas. You give these blueprints to the character Snide the Weasel, and you have to give him. He will exchange golden bananas for those blueprints. Well, now do you get rid of all those golden bananas? Well, then that means now now there's not 5 bananas in every world. Is that okay? Do you need to change the number? Do you need to add more challenges? There's a lot that goes into just making what sounds like could be a big change. And really, the main way to improve the quantity of collectibles in Donkey Kong 64 is that a lot of them shouldn't have been there in the first place. Because then you would never have to ask yourself these questions about, well, what would happen if we didn't have the banana fairies that you have to take pictures of with banana camera film, right? You wouldn't have to really worry about that. What would happen if we just made Cranky be the advice person or the advice Kong instead of Wrinkly Kong, who's now a ghost because you passed away between Donkey Kong Country 3 and Donkey Kong 64 for some reason. I don't know why Rare decided to go in that direction. That's interesting, but sad nonetheless. Well, then what would you do with all the extra moves? Is it good to have all these extra moves that you can learn to do with all these weird button combinations? Those are so many things. There's just so many things that change by making one little change in the game. And the same sort of thing could happen with our special topic, but I haven't quite gotten there yet, so let's not get too excited yet about what could happen by improving the character switching situation. Of course, the Donkey Kong Country games all centered around Donkey Kong getting back his banana horde from K. Rool, and Donkey Kong Country 1, it was King K. Rool, who for whatever reason has a pirate ship, wants to stole Donkey Kong's banana horde, and Donkey Kong gets it back in the end. Donkey Kong Country 2, now Captain K. Rool, who's a pirate, even though he's the same character, kidnaps Donkey Kong and wants to trade the banana horde as ransom for it. Donkey Kong Country 3, Baron K. Rulenstein uses the robot Chaos as a pawn, well, not as a pawn, but as a distraction for his kidnapping of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. So Dixie Kong has to go and figure out why DK and Diddy have been missing for so long. And now Donkey Kong 64, K. Rool has gone back to not only taking the banana horde, but also preparing this doomsday device in the form of the Blast-O-Matic to try to destroy DK Island, right? So, K. Rool has had quite the interesting little set of plans here throughout the times in these rare games. I thought it was important to talk about the story. I didn't really talk about the story in any of these, especially when I made the story to be a very key aspect of the arcade game, so apologies for just kind of shoving that in there, but I thought I should get it out there. The story, this is just not really something that's a problem with the game. I like how Donkey Kong 64 is told. I like how the game looks. It's really the gameplay that's problematic in Donkey Kong 64, and it's just a shame because it should have been the best part. And in some ways, it's just that little bit more upsetting because Donkey Kong 64, I would argue, is not a bad adaptation of the Donkey Kong Country formula. You know, it does include a lot of similar aspects to what Donkey Kong Country put on the map. You switch Kongs through, well, I mean, you had the Kong follow you, whether it was Diddy or Donkey Kong or Kitty or Dixie or whoever the heck you were playing as in a particular game. So you switched Kongs. You had bonus rooms that had mini games that you played. You had your animal buddies. You had minecart levels. Like, there are a lot of aspects of Donkey Kong Country that are in Donkey Kong 64, but that makes me wonder then, perhaps would the country formula not work in 3D, at least in a collectathon setting? Maybe it probably would have been a lot harder to do this, considering that, you know, Nintendo 64 used cartridges, and that made making more stuff in a game more difficult compared to the PlayStation, but perhaps Donkey Kong 64 would have worked better had it gone for the Crash Bandicoot approach of having multiple levels with the bonus rooms. In fact, I would, if you want my honest opinion, I don't like them as much, but I would contend that the Crash Bandicoot trilogy is in some ways a better successor to the Donkey Kong Country trilogy than Donkey Kong 64 is, because it includes, you know, more or less all the same aspects of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy in 3D, all the way to the point of going through linear levels with the bonus rooms along the way that you have to collect, that you need to complete certain objectives to not only get there, but also just complete them in general, right? So, but that's getting a little bit off track. I don't know, maybe, I'm just saying, maybe the Crash direction might have been better for Donkey Kong 64, but the technology that was the Nintendo 64 just couldn't handle it. But alas, you know, we got the game we got in the end, and we will come back to this question of how could the Kong switching mechanic have been tackled later in the rest of this podcast. Now, see, this is where things get a little interesting, because much like Sonic, I actually, not only have I not played any of the GameCube Donkey Kong games, but I haven't played most of what I would call this quote-unquote dark era of Donkey Kong. I haven't played Donkey Konga or Donkey Konga 2. Donkey Konga 3 was Japan exclusive, so I couldn't play that at all. It might have been Europe, actually, too, as well. I'm not certain. I haven't even played Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, and that seems to be a game that's getting, you know, a little bit of a resurgence. Not that much of one, but a little bit. In fact, the only quote-unquote dark era game I've played is Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Now, I have also played DK King of Swing on the Game Boy Advance, but I'm very, very still early into that game, so I don't really have very deep opinions, other than I think the controls are very weird, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to them. But outside of that, again, not a lot of opinions. But I have played a game that seems in recent years to have become a bit more of a joke for good reason, and that's Donkey Kong Barrel Blast on Wii. For a long while, this was the only Wii Donkey Kong game, and it's pretty evident that at some point it was going to have been another GameCube Donkey Kong Bongo game, because what do you do in Donkey Kong Barrel Blast? You know, you have barrels attached to your Kong, like they're basically jet barrels that you race with, and you go on the barrels by shaking the Wii Remote and nunchuck, just like how with the DK bongos, you would hit the bongos over and over again, just like the bongo barrels on the Kongs. And, you know, I have not played Donkey Kong Barrel Blast in a long time, but I think that it is... I don't think it's as bad as people make it seem like it is, but I definitely can understand why it's not considered a very great game. Because, I mean, first off, of course, it's a very tiring game. You are just kind of going like you're drumming appropriately enough. And there really isn't a ton to do in the races. And in fact, in some ways, there's some gimmicky bits with Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Like you have these wild moves that you have to fill up an energy bar for to goodness, why can't I think? To like basically just get a burst of speed, kind of like a mushroom in Mario Kart, but why not just have an item for that, right? Why not? There are these areas where you can like jump into certain barrels and do tricks. You can collect bananas throughout the race. The items are grouped into like categories based on like there are red balloons and blue balloons, and red balloons are they have bonuses if you're playing as a Kong, but the blue balloons have bonuses if you're playing as a Kremling. You unlock a bunch of the characters in the game, of course, as is typical, as like, should be pretty normal. It's just the game is a very odd sort of game. I don't know what entirely to make of Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Like, I like it, but again, there's got to be a reason why I haven't played the game in years, because aside from just not, wanting to boot up the Wii very often. Oh, there are enemies throughout the track. I forgot about that aspect. A couple enemies along the way is fine, like in, as obstacles, but they're like full-blown, like some enemies you can, if I remember correctly, you actually can't attack them. There's a punch button in this game, isn't there? I could be misremembering. Let me look at the controls. I have the controls pulled up here somewhere. Yes, there is an attack. You can attack. Donkey Kong probably just happens to be the one that punches that I'm thinking of. But it's a weird game. And it's just a shame because, speak for myself, I'm sure, but what did everybody want out of console Donkey Kong games post Donkey Kong 64? Probably a return to Donkey Kong Country, or, a new attempt at a 3D Donkey Kong, not a racing game. Donkey Kong just seemed to be, and this is part of why it's the dark era, it seemed like Donkey Kong games were all spin-offs for the longest time outside of the remakes of Donkey Kong Country on the Game Boy Advance. And I would say DK, King of Swing, and Jungle Climber approach being mainline games, but because of their off-kilter controls, they don't exactly meet what should have been a mainline Donkey Kong game, at least in my opinion. And then, 3 years later, 2010 rolls around, and not only did Donkey Kong come back, you could say that Donkey Kong Country returns. Bum, bum, bum. No wonder it got the title. Although, of course, in context, it's a good title. In looking back on it now that the game is 11 years old, Donkey Kong Country Returns is certainly a bit of a strange title for a game. But I tell you, Donkey Kong Country Returns, that was just the game we needed at the time. Because it seemed like Donkey Kong was just, now Donkey Kong is a Mario character instead of an actual original character that could do his own thing in his own series like he'd been doing for years, not unlike Yoshi and Wario, although Wario's kind of a sad case nowadays because he only has WarioWare, but I digress. And even then, Donkey Kong hasn't had a ton of games since Donkey Kong Country Returns is basically just that and Tropical Freeze, and I would like to see a new Donkey Kong game. Just saying's all Nintendo. But there are definitely some aspects of Donkey Kong Country Returns that I liked, some that I didn't like. Of course, everybody talks about, like, why was it that you had to shake the Wii remote for certain actions? I don't know if this is just me. I didn't find them all that intrusive. Some I kind of found fun, like when you beat a boss, Donkey Kong jumps at it, and if you just like start punching, unless you wait until a certain time, he'll just punch it out of existence. But if you wait until you get the prompt, then you can just go punch the opponent like tons and tons of times and punch them out into the background in the same sort of way that you would if you just punch initially. But I don't know if this is a super great description unless you've played Donkey Kong Country Returns or Tropical Freeze. But yeah, a lot of Donkey Kong Country Returns was defined by the Wii Remote. You could play it with the Wii Remote on its side. I actually preferred the Wiimote nunchuck combination, even though, now that meant I had to play a 2D game with a control stick instead of a D-pad, which is not so great. But it was fun. And it was just great to see, Donkey Kong's back, and the levels are, they're challenging. They have bonuses, they have collectibles. I actually 100% completed Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D on the 3DS. And that version, of course, had button controls. Just a little bit of everything returned. But there were also still some strange things, like there were new enemies in the form of the Tiki Tak tribe. Rambi was the only animal buddy. Technically, Squawks was an animal buddy, but he only shows where puzzle pieces are. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. There's new collectibles. Instead of getting coins from bonus levels to unlock the final world, instead you would obtain puzzle pieces that would unlock a piece of concept art for a level. If you got all of the Kong letters, you would unlock an extra level in each world, as opposed to unlocking levels in a lost world, which, functionally they're the same thing, so I'm not too broken up about it, but I do think there was some sort of allure about there being an extra world as opposed to just having a temple level in each world, like there are in Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. Of course, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze also had its own unique set of villains in the form of the Snowmads. But it also came with some of the similar trappings that I found problematic in Returns. Like, again, Rambi was the only animal buddy. I really want to see a return of the Kremlings, especially now that King K. Rool is in Smash, but that's just an unimportant aside. There were just brand new items. You could try to make the game easier, essentially, by using items like the extra heart or the goodness, why can't I think of it? The banana juice. And then in the end, for getting all of the Kong letters and beating all of the temple levels, and you beat a temple level, you obtain some kind of an orb. Similar in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, you obtain, I think it's like a birthday present when you beat all of the hidden temple levels throughout the game. In Donkey Kong Country Returns, you get a whole whopping 1 extra level. That's like kind of harder, and then you unlock mirror mode, so you get to play through the game again in reverse. And then you have to get all of the the Kong letters again in reverse. Thankfully, you don't have to get the presents again. I like that, but like, I think Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze are like amazing games, but they have it's always these weird little itty bitty. It's kind of like with Zelda. These are great games. I actually would say I like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze way more than I tend to like the Zelda games just in general, just because I like Donkey Kong better. But there are still these little weird decisions throughout them compared to the Rareware games that are just like, why did you choose to do something like this? And they're not necessarily bad. In the case of Tropical Freeze, they do certainly make some improvements as far as like it does have a couple. I think that if I remember correctly, I have the level list here. Here you have 3 bonus world levels instead of just 1 extra world. 1 level in the final extra world. I don't remember what you unlock for. Do you actually unlock for beating any of the secret levels? Oh man, it doesn't say. Clearly, see, I have not beaten Tropical Freeze. It's the only Donkey Kong Country game I have not beaten. I haven't. I only ever beat Returns 3D 100%. I never beat one. I'm working on him on the SNES online service, but I digress. I just, man, there's so many good things about these, but so many little itty bitty things that I want to see improved about them. But I still love them. I still like them a lot. In fact, I really like. I've made an effort since the Switch version of Tropical Freeze came out to try to go back and like, oh, I should really finish Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, because I've had Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on Wii U since launch. In fact, I am at the 4th of 6 worlds. I am making decent progress to beating that game, but I gotta get that a little bit further in the game. I gotta actually beat it all, 100%. And I'm making good progress there. So I think that covers all of the games. I didn't really talk about the Donkey Kong Land trilogy much. I haven't played them a ton. Donkey Kong Land 1 is really the only one that's super different from the country equivalent on the SNES. But they're kind of hard. They have some of their own weird design quirks, like having to collect coins to save in Donkey Kong Land 1. Donkey Kong Land 2 is more or less a Game Boy version of Donkey Kong Country 2. Donkey Kong Land 3 had a Game Boy Color version that was only in Japan. But it was definitely more distinct. You could only have one Kong at a time. I don't think the lives were numerated. There were like a long line of hearts. It was just kind of weird. And then, of course, the physics on them are a little different. And, of course, you're trying to take a 16-bit game that had way more buttons you could use. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe Donkey Kong Country could work on an NES controller, but I digress. But you're trying to fit it on a Game Boy, which by default only had NES numbers of buttons. I think that covers all the games I'd want to talk about here, though, for the Donkey Kong series. So let's get into our other topical discussions, like what is in the future of Donkey Kong. And man, Donkey Kong is a real tough series to pin down, I tell ya. I'm in a weird, I want to be optimistic, but I'm not optimistic at the same time, because it feels like the Donkey Kong series is at a similar impasse as it was post-2007, where it's like, there's no new games on the horizon. In fact, the latest Donkey Kong game is a port of the newest Donkey Kong game. Like, what a sad state of affairs that is, to have the new Donkey Kong game on Switch be the same new Donkey Kong game that was on Wii U. Granted, that's because Wii U, of course, but it's just upsetting that there couldn't have been a new Donkey Kong game on Switch. I would certainly have picked up a new Donkey Kong Country on Switch, or like an actual 3D game or something of the like, but we don't have that. And, I think for the most part, yeah, we're gonna keep seeing Donkey Kong appear in Mario games. He was just in Mario Golf Super Rush. He was just in Mario Tennis Aces. He's in Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe. He's even in Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle in the form of the DLC. But, as far as actual Donkey Kong-focused games, I have no idea what's going to happen. And that's a shame, because I feel like we should have confidence as fans of the Kong crew to know that, hey, there's going to be something happening for Donkey Kong in the future outside of Mario, even if it is something similar, even if it was like a reimagining of the arcade game or the arcade formula, even that would be fine. I want to know that there's something happening for Donkey Kong, and at the moment, we don't know what that is. So the future, I would say, for the Donkey Kong series isn't bright, but it isn't bleak. It's just kind of somewhere in that gray mystery zone, and I want it to be somewhere other than that. So we'll see what happens. I suppose worst case scenario, it's kind of like the time period between Star Fox Command and Star Fox Zero. Almost like eerily similar, I would argue, because you had this not so great game come out, and then the series went dormant for a little bit, and I mean, it's a little bit different, I guess, because you had Donkey Kong Country Returns in the middle, whereas like that game was a huge success. But then Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is on the Wii U, and even though that was a great game, it was on the Wii U, not unlike how Star Fox Zero, even though that also wasn't considered to be an amazing game, was also just on the Wii U. So, I don't know. I want confidence in a new game. I really do. But I don't know how well Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on Switch is selling. And even to that end, of course, Retro Studios right now is working on Metroid Prime 4. So they're certainly not open to work on a new Donkey Kong game. And I don't know if Nintendo just doesn't trust any other studio at the moment to work on a new Donkey Kong game. I don't know if they're just not confident that an internal development team could make a new Donkey Kong game, even though, of course, the team behind Super Mario Galaxy also made Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Actually, I guess, I am wrong. There is one little beacon of hope for the Donkey Kong series right now, although it is in some ways a rumor, so take this with, not just a grain of salt, but with a rock salt lamp, so to speak. There has been a long-rumored Donkey Kong attraction coming to Super Nintendo World, so if there's anything that I think could put Donkey Kong back on the map, yeah, it's gonna be a theme park attraction, because that's pretty huge, even if it's just in the Japan world, Super Nintendo World, even if it doesn't come to Orlando, or, Orlando's Florida, or to Hollywood. I think the other location's in Hollywood. If it does come to there, yeah, certainly that would help the what's a good word for it? Not the prominence, but like the appearance? No. I'm having a terrible time remembering words in this podcast. It's kind of frustrating. But it would bring Donkey Kong back in some way, shape, or form to just, have an attraction at a massive theme park that thousands, if not millions of people go to every year. Maybe not so much right now, thanks to good old COVID-19 now turning into COVID-20 and 21. But I digress. So, yeah, Donkey Kong, weird place, but I have faith that, like I said, I brought up Star Fox as a good example. If Star Fox could get an entry, like, after years and years and years and years, Donkey Kong is going to get an entry. Now, is F-Zero ever going to get a new game? I don't know. I would love if F-Zero got a new game, but that's not what we're talking about today. Sad. So let's talk about our last little bit here, then. Let's talk about what should we do about the character switching mechanic in Donkey Kong 64? So this is kind of in the vein of like with my Zelda episode here, where it's like, how do you improve the CDI games? But instead, I just want to deep dive on this one specific topic here. So, Donkey Kong 64 had 5 characters that you could play as throughout the game. Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Tiny Kong, Lanky Kong, and Chunky Kong. All of each had their own unique abilities, and they all had to collect their own unique bananas and their own unique banana coins. They were all color-coded to each Kong. Donkey Kong had yellow, Diddy had red, Lanky had blue, oh my goodness, Tiny had purple, and Chunky had green bananas, and they all had banana coins of those exact same colors. So frequently what you would do when you're wandering around a world in Donkey Kong 64, especially after you've unlocked all of the playable Kongs, is, you could be Donkey Kong, and you'll be running around, and you'll find, like, oh, here's a place where I have a challenge. And a bunch of bananas I can't collect. So you could be walking around, and you find a barrel with Donkey Kong's face plastered on it. If I remember correctly, those are the bonus barrels. And it's like, oh, here I am, and I'm going to go do this challenge. But now you have to remember, I need to come back here as Diddy Kong, because there's a bunch of red bananas around here. So then you go back there, so then you complete the challenge, or maybe you fail at it a couple of times, and then you have to backtrack all the way back to wherever the closest tag barrel was. So this is the way that Donkey Kong 64 chose to handle character switching. There were these barrels throughout each world that would let you switch Kongs, right? So, you would go in and you'd be like, okay, I know I need to do these things as Diddy. So I will go, instead of being Donkey Kong, I will now be Diddy Kong. So then Diddy Kong comes out, and then you go and do whatever you needed to do as Diddy. Problem with that was there are only so many tag barrels in a given world, so it could be that the tag barrel is way out of the way from a certain objective, so now you need to go switch back. So now you've done something, and then you need to travel all the way across a world, turn into Diddy, go all the way back to where you were, do that, and then travel all the way back to the tag barrel to accomplish whatever next objective you happened to see or think you should do or want to tackle at that point as a different Kong. Or, if you're lucky, maybe you'd find something new to do as Diddy Kong in the same world. But as you can imagine, this sort of thing gets very, very tedious. So something that's been brought in, and that's been a common issue brought up in reviews of Donkey Kong 64. So there have been a couple of solutions proposed for how you would fix this problem. One, I don't remember if it's a mod or if it's a Game Shark code, but one solution is just to have a tag barrel constantly be above the Kong that you're playing as. Now, of course, that runs into the issue of, well, how do you make it, I have not played with the Game Shark. I don't have a Game Shark, and I don't remember, like I said, if it's a Game Shark thing or if it's a mod to the game. Sometimes you gotta jump higher than the tag barrel. How do you know, it hurts the game to have that above you. It, in theory, solves the problem, because then you just have access to a tag barrel wherever the heck, but then, like I said, it makes it so that you can't jump as high all of the time. Similarly, another solution that's been commonly brought up is, what's the one button on the Nintendo 64 controller that almost never gets used? That's right, the the D-pad. Yes, the L button very rarely gets used, because similarly, it's on the same, the Nintendo 64 controller had the 3 prongs. You had the control stick and start in the middle. On the right, you had A and B and the C buttons and R. Oh, the middle area underneath, there was a Z trigger. So frequently, you'd hold the middle prong in your left hand with your thumb on the stick and your left pointer finger on the Z button. And then your right hand would be on the right prong with A and B and the C buttons and R. But then, of course, no human being has 3 hands, so it can't hold the D-pad or the L button. And the only game that I can think of that I own that uses the D-pad extensively is Kirby 64, and in that, you don't use the middle prong at all other than start, so instead you use the D-pad and L and A and B and the C buttons and R. So, as you can imagine, the D-pad does nothing in Donkey Kong 64, so what will be a great way to switch out Kongs, then? Assign each Kong to a direction on the directional pad. You start as... So the one problem with that, of course, is there's 5 of them, right? So, essentially, you need to assign, okay, Diddy is left, Lanky is up, Tiny is right, and Chunky is down, if you're playing as Donkey Kong. And then, of course, Donkey Kong would just be, if you're playing as one of those 4 other ones, whichever direction would be the other one is how you switch back to Donkey Kong. I think that could work. I also don't think it's a very imaginative solution, and it also has the problem that, you can't switch really in the middle of action, because now you need to suddenly stop, move your thumb over to the D-pad, and pick whichever direction, right? Honestly, I don't know if I would call it an elegant solution. I don't know how exactly I would classify it. To me, honestly, that would be the option I would pick if I were to redesign Donkey Kong 64, just because it is, Occam's razor, right? Simplest solution is usually the best solution. That's how I would, like I said, that's how I would want to solve the problem. But I can understand some folks thinking it's not a super creative solution, and it would, of course, undermine, there would be no need for tag barrels anymore. And like I said earlier, you remove one aspect of the game, suddenly the system might just completely fall flat. Also, then that comes with the issue that it's in some ways, you don't want to make it too convenient for the player, because then that raises the question of, well, why should there be 5 separate characters, right? Why can't I just, if I can just switch all of my characters on the fly using the directional pad, why can't I just have one character that can do all of the actions? So, you could, you could do something like just, perhaps this is the other Occam's razor solution, have more tag barrels around the world. Then, but, of course, then you run into the question of, well, then how many tag barrels is too many tag barrels, right? Does it make sense to, like, I don't know Metroid very well, but it'd be like, oh, I have a save room here, and then like 3 or 4 rooms over is another save room. What will be the point in that? Why would you want to have a tag barrel be so close? It's the same principle, right? So you need to strike this weird balance of having a solution that is elegant in the sense that it's like, oh, that makes sense, that's intuitive, but it doesn't make things too easy for the player. But the way that it is almost makes things too inconvenient for the player. And once things start getting inconvenient for the player, then the player starts not having so much fun, right? I'm trying to think. What other sorts of ways could you do something? Maybe you could. I almost feel like the Super Mario 64 DS method might be an interesting way of tackling the problem. Where, oh, okay, now, so like let's say in a given world, right? You had a tie laying out, and that let you instantly like, you're playing as like Tiny, and now I can transform into Donkey Kong. And, somewhere else there was. See, it's hard because all the characters don't have unique outfit things that would work for all of them. DK has the tie, Diddy could have like the Nintendo hat, Tiny could have her like her winter hat. I don't know what you would do for Lanky or Chunky, though. That's where I'm struggling here. You maybe could do Chunky's sweater. I just don't know what you'd do for Tiny. Or, not Tiny, Lanky. But I digress. That could be an elegant solution. Just make it so that it's like, oh, if the team who is designing the world noticed, like, oh, there's a lot of Diddy Kong stuff here, but we have like a couple of Donkey Kong related objectives. Let's place this Donkey Kong's tie item here, so that way the player can instantly transform into Donkey Kong for this one objective. And I guess the way I would differentiate it from Super Mario 64 DS, not that the team had to worry about that at the time, because Mario 64 DS was a few years out, obviously, but you could, perhaps similarly to some of the bonus barrels throughout the world that have the characters' faces on them, you could have it be have the outfits be on a timer. You could also have it be where, like, you could straight up do like what they did in Super Mario 64 DS and have it be, Diddy Kong is now Lanky, or Chunky is now Tiny for whatever, from picking up this outfit item. But now once you get hit by an enemy, you lose that and transform back into the main Kong. I don't know, I don't want to say it would work to basically be a permanent transformation where it's more or less like a single tag barrel, if that makes sense, where it's like, okay, if you pick up this item, now you just swap out the Kongs permanently, because, well, maybe, like I said, you're in an area where there's a ton of Diddy Kong objectives, like there's a ton of red bananas and red banana coins, but you just have one Donkey Kong objective or one Tiny Kong objective, so let's just have the item here, and, then you can just get that one thing done. Because I would think that permanently having that, you would either need to basically have the item switch out based on which Kong isn't active. So, like, if, like I said, if you have a Donkey Kong objective, you switch out Donkey Kong's tie for Diddy Kong's hat then. So, I don't know. I think that could be an interesting solution to it. I don't know. I'm really curious what sorts of solutions other folks would come up with. If that could be a good little bit of engagement for folks who want to send in voice messages or on anchor.fm/THECOP or in the form of YouTube comments or whatever other commenting related platform you may use. That could be an interesting idea. Maybe you have your own unique solution for how to solve this Donkey Kong 64 switching problem, but there's got to be something that's better than having a handful of barrels throughout the world that can that you have to backtrack between to switch your Kong. Nonetheless, I at the moment I'm running out of ideas. This could be an interesting. I might tag in an intro one day in a podcast far away, since this is the end of my summer recordings. I could say like, hey, I should talk about this more, see if I find more solutions on like a Reddit post or a forum somewhere. But those are the ideas I had for now. It's not a ton of ideas, but I think they're all valuable solutions worth pursuing. But I think that covers what I wanted to say about Donkey Kong today. I hope this was a good episode. I don't know, I'm never like Mr. Super confident when I record something that this is going to be like, yeah, this is going to be amazing. But I hope this does well, especially if this is like I said, this is the last recording. I'll have probably just released these in the chronological order based on my recordings. So this is going to close out the Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza. Hopefully this will close out 2021. Maybe I'll have something extra in there. I don't know yet. Considering how late this semester is going. But with that, I ask everybody to do their typical sorts of engagement things. Give me those DK64 character switching ideas that you may have for me. It's been a pleasure recording for everyone as always. Like I said, I do this. This is the creative outlet, so I do have it as a creative outlet, just something to do, to be creative and work productively on something during my own time. So I think that covers everything I wanted to say. Again, engage, likes, potential subscriptions or hearts or whatever you like to do. I will see everybody in the next Creative Outlet podcast. It should not be a gaming birthday extravaganza episode. It will be something different. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening in or watching in. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, and goodbye.